Hi guys, and continuing with my Metropolitan Division season previews for the 2018-2019 season, I'm going to be moving on to the Philadelphia Flyers, and obviously the Philadelphia Flyers are a playoff team. They came off making the playoffs last season. I believe they lost in round one to the Pittsburgh Penguins, which wasn't too big of a surprise considering Couturier was injured, and more on him a little bit later. But in terms of looking at their offense, I love Claude Giroux. I think he's an incredible player. Obviously, a great two-way player. Elite creativity, elite hands. Been one of the best centers in the league for a while. He played left wing last season, and I don't think he gets to 100 plus points again. I think that was a little bit of an admiration, but definitely has the possibility of reaching 80 plus, maybe even 90. Especially if he plays with a guy like Couturier, who in my opinion, is one of the best two way centers in the game, and you can argue that he should have been considered top 10 center in the game. He really has been really good for a long time, especially defensively with how tough his matchup role has been in the past. But it's nice to see his offensive game come around and show up in terms of actual on ice results in terms of points. But I'm a huge fan of Sean Couturier, um, and that contract is just it's beautiful. So I think Travis Konechny, I believe he's going to play in the first line with Couturier and Giroux to spread out the offense a little bit. I think he's slightly overrated, and I think a guy like Nolan Patrick is probably a little bit underrated. And the reason I believe that a guy like Travis Konechny is slightly overrated is just because he plays with really good players, but his relative results aren't too good. Um, and obviously that might be a young guy trying to get used to the NHL. Um, However, I don't think that he's should be considered a first line right winger yet. He could get there one day, but for right now, I think he's more of a second middle tier second liner. And Nolan Patrick, obviously, he didn't have a really good first half because I believe he was coming off some sort of surgery, sports hernia surgery maybe. But he really turned it on the second half, and I think he people are really underselling his potential. A guy like Jacob Voracek, one of the best right wingers in the game, elite playmaker. And he should be good for around a point a game, maybe 70-ish points um, in a down season, low 60s, but I think he should be in that 70s range. And then Hextall brought in a guy like JVR, and JVR was obviously a big get for them. I think he got 7 million at 5 years, which isn't too bad. And being in Toronto, I watch JVR every night. He's one of the most efficient scorers in the NHL. If you look at his goal per 60 minutes metric, he's really efficient because he didn't get too much ice time here, but he produced a lot of goals. He's absolute menace on the power play. People consider him a little bit one dimensional, and he was a little bit one dimensional last season and throughout his career, as Philly fans probably know. But that one dimension goal scoring is pretty amazing, and he was sheltered last season on Toronto's third line and really put up amazing results relative to the usage he got. He beat up third tier competition really well, and played generally with Tyler Bozak and sometimes Mitch Marner, but as the season progressed, he played more with Connor Brown. Those three were a really good line. Um, and two of those guys are gone now. So, anyways, his goal total should regress, in my opinion, because I believe he had a career high shooting percentage, and that's one of the first things you look at when you try to determine whether a season's repeatable. So, I don't think he can get to 36 goals, but he's a consistent 30-point guy, and if he gets some more ice time, I believe he can get up to 60 points. Wayne Simmons is obviously a nice player to have on the third line. I think he's somewhat overrated throughout his career. Um, just doesn't really perform up to what his potential says he is. He's not really a top line player, probably a nice second liner. His relative results and his expected goals and his underlying metrics aren't too impressive in my opinion. Um, the defense is decent. I think that Shane Gostisbehere is one of the best defensemen in the league, and Ivan Provorov should get up there soon. I think that Radko Gudas is really underrated. I really want him in Toronto. I think that um, I don't know. This is kind of funny to say, but he's kind of like a modern version of Roman Polak. He's mean. He's tough, hard to play against, but he also puts up amazing numbers relative to his team and amazing underlying numbers. From what I see from Travis Sanheim, I like him, especially as maybe a bottom pairing guy. Um, but they also got some really ugly pieces in guys like Andrew McDonald and and Hag, who really need to step it up. And they got ugly goaltending as well with Mrazek and Elliott. I guess Elliott can be okay, but can't overwork him, and I guess they're just waiting it out for Carter Hart to come along. So the Flyers last year, looking at their underlying numbers, they're kind of a mediocre possession team, especially mediocre offensively. Though they had good power play with Giroux and Ghost is probably one of the best power play quarterbacks in the NHL. He's on my top 10 offensive defenseman list if you want to check that out. Then a guy like Provorov there as well. I think he's incredible. Provorov is a terrifically underrated player. So in terms of Corsi for, they put up a 49.88, which is about break even. 18th in the NHL, so pretty average there. Corsi for per 60, 48.28, excuse me, which is 24th in the NHL. So they didn't really do a whole lot in terms of generating shot and shot attempts. Although that might have to do with the system Haxtell plays. Um, Corsi against per 60 minutes, they're really good defensively, 48.50. So that's pretty good. And that's why they were just under break even in terms of Corsi. But they're a really good defensive team, 8th in the NHL in terms of Corsi against. Goals for per 60 minutes, 2.31, which is 14th in the NHL, so around average. Although with the addition of JVR, I think that should go up a little bit, and continued development from guys like Konechny and Nolan Patrick. And another full season from Sean Couturier, who I think he'll develop a lot more as well. So goals against per 60 minutes, 2.08, which is 9th in the NHL. So obviously, again, that reflects their stout defensive play. Where I mentioned that their Corsi against per 60 minutes was 8th in the NHL. In terms of goal against per 60 minutes, 2.08, which is 9th in the NHL. So looking at expected goals, which I got from Corsica, their expected goals for per 60 minutes is 2.2, which is 21st in the NHL. So they need to do a better job of, since they don't generate a ton of shot attempts and shots, maybe generating more high danger chances from the home plate area and focusing on that. That's something that their coaching staff should definitely look at because they're not really generating too many high danger chances. However, they're not giving up too many, which brings us to expected goals against for 60 minutes, which is 2.14, which is 7th best in the NHL. In terms of their PDO, it was at 100.4, so slightly above average. They weren't too unlucky, and they weren't lucky by any means. They were just average, so no PDO regression there. Lastly, in terms of their penalty differential, plus 43, which is second best in the NHL. And I don't know if penalty differential is a repeatable skill. Some people say it is, but that seems like a little bit too high for me. So I'd expect them to get fewer power play calls and more penalty calls against them because 43 is a lot. So their most important player, I'm going to say Nolan Patrick, and as I mentioned, really strong second half. After being mediocre recovering from the surgery, he had mediocre results last season. Good relative expected goals for numbers, but pretty bad defensively with sheltered usage. I think that, as I mentioned before, there's a lot there, and I think people are really underselling his potential. I think Nolan Patrick can be probably a really good top end second line center. And then their minus is and the area for improvement is obviously goaltending. Their expected goals against was 2.14, and they actually conceded 2.31, or 2.08. So, although on paper it doesn't look like their goaltending is really outperforming their expected goaltending, I just think that when you have guys like Elliott and Mrazek, who aren't bona fide number ones and who've never really outperformed their underlying expected save percentage in the past, I think that's an area for concern. But they do have a stud in Carter Hart coming up. So I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and in conclusion, I have the Flyers finishing second in the Metropolitan Division. So thank you.